One of the greatest social injustices of our time is mass incarceration. And the reason I say that, it's not only somebody who went through prison for 26 years, but it's because of the people I left behind and the people we work with every day. We find that people who go through the criminal justice system have a really hard time transitioning back into society as law-abiding, contributing citizens. And for that reason, I like to profile people who have faced challenges in their own life, but have come back strong with their dignity intact and not only made life better for themselves and their family, but for other people as well. And that's why I'm so enthusiastic to introduce you to Adam, a real dyed-in-the-wool entrepreneur who builds businesses, creates jobs, and has become successful. And just to give you a little taste of that, Adam, I asked you before we started this interview, the amount of revenues that you did in your biggest business. What was that amount?
Just that 11 million a year.
That's almost $1 million a month. And I can guarantee you it did not happen by accident. It happened because he follows the same principles that every student can learn through our courses. So Adam, if it's okay with you, I just want to first of all stop by thanking you. You're a hero to me. You're the kind of guy that would have inspired me when I was climbing through 9,500 days in prison, and you still inspire me today. So I'm just going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your background. A lot of our people in prison, they don't have a lot of great role models in their life. You are one of those role models. And I'd love it if you would talk to us a little bit about where you grew up and what life was like for you as a young man before you became a successful entrepreneur.
Michael, thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing me this platform to share my story. So I grew up in San Bernardino, California with three brothers, a mom and dad. I guess I was privileged in the sense that so many don't have a mom and dad in a household. So I was very fortunate to have that. During the time I wanted to do things my way, and along the road, I made several mistakes as a young man. And it was easy to do when hanging out with the wrong crowd. And one thing led to another. Those mistakes led to a period of time of incarceration. And I've had to live with that being in my past for many of years. And it's been great to be able to overcome those obstacles and to build companies and be where we're at today.
A lot of people, as you know, in jail and prison have that same background where they make some decisions that, hang around the wrong group, and they get influenced in the wrong way, and they make some decisions that they later regret. The unfortunate thing is the longer we expose people to corrections in America, a lot of times the less likely those people are to get corrected and to come back strong. You really overcame those odds. And I'd love to get a little more information from you on, what you did when you got in trouble as a young man. How old were you, and what mindset did you have when you went into the system?
So it started when I was a young man at 15 years old. Again, making poor decisions as a young man. I did have a grandfather who was chief of police of the city in which we grew up in. And so I felt that I had a sense of I was unstoppable. You watch television, you see people doing dumb crap and getting away with it. And so I kind of lived in this fantasy land and didn't realize that those mistakes, that every time the police officer put me in handcuffs and cited me, but released me to my grandmother, that there was still this record being built up behind the scenes. Eventually, my grandfather said to another officer, "It's time for you to do your job." And before you know it, I'm in jail, and there was nothing anyone could do. I couldn't get out. And so I had to, at that point, start understanding that I'm going to go through a new process. And there was a new reality, and that was me spending time in jail as a youth.
When you were spending that time in jail as a youth, though, clearly you made some different decisions, because when I listen to you now, you sound like an ambassador, not like somebody who spent time in jail and prison. And I know that didn't happen by accident. You really must have went through some personal development training and so on. How did you adjust while you were in jail and prison? And how did your adjustment differ from what you saw?
I think that really what it was that I didn't like to be incarcerated. I don't know if anyone does, but I wanted to overcome that cycle. And so I knew that there was a way to tap into a skill set that I had while doing the bad things per se on the street, that I could convert that energy into something positive. And so I did best practices while incarcerated, tried to be a good person, treat people with respect, learn the laws of the land and follow those laws of the land. And eventually, when my time came to come home, I put energy into resources such as being the best possible person I could be in the work environment and giving it my all, and learning to respect your authoritative figures. So it was one subtle thing at a time.
I'll say that as somebody who was incarcerated for, multiple decades and also served in prisons of every security level, there was always a consistent message that I heard. I always disagreed with that message because I knew I wanted to come back like you, a successful man, rather than somebody who's defined by my worst decisions. But I want to get your take if you've ever heard a message like this, because it happened when I was in the United States penitentiaries, FCIs, medium security, low security. It didn't matter where I was. I always heard this message. The best way to serve time is to forget about the world outside and focus on your time in jail and prison. Did you ever hear anything like that? And if you did, how did you respond?
Michael, yeah, you did hear that. And, you got to let everyone just express themselves and kind of take it for what it's worth. But at the end of the day, I can't put myself in a place maybe that you were in where you're facing, decades long imprisonment. I had, a few years that I had to do. And so I knew that my time there would end sooner than others. And so my focus was making sure that while I was incarcerated, that I was going to follow the laws of the land and keep myself out of trouble as best as possible. But I was focusing on that day and doing what I could to prepare myself for the moment where I was returned back into the community, and wanting to build up an energy and insight as to what was I going to do when I was actually released. One thing that was odd and some people would say I was crazy is there were times where we would be on lockdown for weeks at a time. You might end up in lockup for months at a time for certain various reasons. And I would almost talk to myself as though I was actually communicating with consumers or high-level CEOs. And I felt that I was sharpening a tool that I really didn't even know existed because I hadn't been in the work environment to actually utilize that tool. Years later, I look back and I say, wow, some of those visions, some of those times in that moment of being alone was me actually envisioning the possibilities of what at some point became a reality. And it was really kind of a strange thing to look back and say, I was actually doing work in those confinement times of confinement.
That is the message that really would have influenced the way I adjusted while I was in prison, as I loved it to listen to people that didn't talk about wanting to be successful. The people that really became successful, they all share that same message, that they would invest in themselves and be thinking and projecting, these are the people I want to connect with in the future. How can I influence the way that I think, the way that I talk, the way I express myself, so that I might have more validity with those people? And I certainly hear that in you. And I hope that the people watching our program inside of jails and prisons hear from you as well, because the reality is that all of us have to face this challenge of, are we going to allow our worst decisions to define who we are? Or are we going to allow the way that we responded to a bad situation to define who we are? And I'm really grateful to you for expressing that. Tell us a little bit about the business when you started to become an entrepreneur. And I think that you've had a role in creating a number of businesses. Could you walk us through kind of chronologically about what you did when you got out and what businesses you started to build?
Yeah, sure, Michael. So as you know, unfortunately, I wasn't the guy that got in trouble as a youth and then came home and things were perfect. I came home, I stumbled, I got in trouble again, and a decade later, I got in more trouble, and it kind of led to another incarceration. I'll start here where I got a job doing something I never thought I'd be able to do. I got a job in real estate, and I'm thinking I'm an ex-con. I have a background. Who's going to ever give me a shot? And I went and met this gentleman that was running a company back in 2002, and everyone was in suit and ties. And I didn't own a suit and tie. I don't even think I'd ever put one on at that time, but he was willing to give me an opportunity. And so the great thing is when I took that opportunity, I said, I am going to outwork everyone that is in my presence because they have a skill set that I may not have because they have the experience that I don't have. And so I think what it was my that deep desire to want to succeed, to see people in a world that I wanted to live in. And I was so, not ashamed, but knowing where I came from, I felt like I had to go into overdrive to accomplish things that maybe some people, it just came by second nature. And so at that time, I just really gave my all and started to build real healthy relationships where people were actually guiding you, not judging me on my past, but judging me on the person that I was before them in that in the present time. So that created opportunities there for me, Michael. And then from there, other doors opened up, and I was able to create companies, which I can share with you at some point as well.
Yeah, let's get there kind of organically and chronologically, linearly, I should say.
Okay.
Because you've given me some real nuggets there that I want to really drill down on, because this would have been valuable to me, and I hope it's valuable to people in jail and prison. And you said that you got out and you stumbled a couple of times, and you went back to prison before you connected with this person who kind of sponsored you or gave you a shot in real estate. And I'm going to ask you, did you choose some friends during this time that you stumbled that put you on a pathway back to prison?
I went back to the friends that I knew from before. Like those were my friends. And so I went back to them, and although I was working and I wasn't committing crimes per se, and I was doing the right thing, you realize that you're being held now to a different standard. And I'm still learning that today, that when you are of one that ends up in the system and you have that background, it's going to stay with you forever. And so no matter what you're doing in life, you're creating a family, you're creating jobs, you're working, those people that are around you could cause trouble for you. And so you're really held accountable, and you have to hold yourself accountable to the highest levels. And it's not an easy challenge. And so what had happened was I was with a group of people, and they did something very stupid. And because I was present and I was on the probation or parole, they snagged me up and took me back. I had nothing to do with the incident. There were even people that came to my hearings and said he had nothing to do with the incident. But sometimes in the system, it doesn't matter. And so there I was back in incarceration, right when I had figured that my life was heading in a direction that I was very pleased with. My company didn't help that.
And that is a really important lesson, because an individual can start choosing friends even while they're incarcerated. I know that while I was serving my time in prison, it was never important to me to want to be the king of the TV set or run a poker table or be in charge of some type of a hustle. What was far more important was for me to find leaders, people like Adam, that I could learn from, whether they were in prison or whether I read about them, in a book. I could find a mentor that may not even be alive, but I could, just by listening and learning to what that person said, it can influence what I can become. And I'm listening and learning to Adam right now. He then said he made another friend. At one point, he made a choice to try something else, and he met this fella in real estate that gave him a shot. And he was surrounded by people that wore suit and tie. So he identified what success was going to look like for him, and then he put himself in the pathway to do it. Could you tell us how you met that fella who was in real estate that decided to open a door for you?
So ironic enough, it was one of the childhood friends that kind of just branched off and kind of went his own way. And when we had crossed paths again, he says, Adam, one thing about you, I was working construction. I hated it, but I knew I had to do it. And he says, why don't you come meet why don't you come meet the guy I work for? I think this is for you. And he had known me, just my ability to communicate with people. We all know that we carry some skill set. You just got to kind of find it. And so he took me down to this office location, beautiful office, introduced me on a Saturday to the man in charge, and the man in charge gave me this opportunity, said, come start Monday. It was almost the hardest thing to do, though, because one, I knew I didn't own any suits, so I didn't know how I was going to figure that out. And my parents were my support system, and I was working for my father in the construction field. I didn't know how to go back to my parents and say, look, I've made mistakes so many years of my life, and you guys have always been there to support me. Dad, you've given me a job. I'm out here busting my ass. I'm making a wage. I absolutely hate it, and I'm going to quit because I'm going to go try something new. And so it was kind of that moment where I had to go tell my parents, I'm going to believe in myself and do something that you guys may be against. It was a commission sales position in real estate, and I just took that leap, and so that opportunity presented itself, and I'm grateful to the owner of that company, where I won't mention any names, but he became my mentor for many years, and I was very grateful for that man being in my life. He knew about my past, and he looked beyond that, and he was a really well-respected businessman, and I learned a lot from him.
And that's how we always strive to be the change that we want to see in the world. When I hear a story like that, it's one of the reasons that I get motivated to create these videos and try to bring them back into jails and prisons, just to sow these seeds of hope. I would argue that Adam wasn't just lucky to meet this real estate guy, but rather the way he chose to respond in prison and to develop his diction, his ability to communicate, very likely influenced that person who saw him and said, this is a man who's somewhat self-made. He's tried to polish himself, and I'm going to give him an opportunity. Because I'm not giving him an opportunity. He's earned an opportunity. And that's what we encourage you to do. If you're watching this video, put yourself in a position where other people will want to invest in you. Why don't you walk us through the trajectory of your career once you transitioned into professional real estate sales or investments or whatever role you had in that business?
Thanks, Michael. So yeah, I think that at that time I was 22 years old, and we think we have it all figured out at 22. I was given this great opportunity, but I still wasn't mature enough to really understand the opportunity that was given to me. And so I struggled through in the real estate industry. I had some great times, some bad times, but I wasn't mature in the sense that take full advantage of this opportunity. I think, time comes where finally the light bulbs gets turned on, but I spent the better part of about 8 years in that industry, moving around, working for I ended up leaving that company and going to other companies as I grew in the industry. And there were some milestones that things started to happen in 2005. That same mentor of mine, 3 years later, I had left his company, but 3 years later, I was his first branch manager per se, where I opened my first company down in Carlsbad, California, right on PCH. Me and a partner opened up our own mortgage company, and he was the main company that gave us the opportunity to open our own. And so things started happening relatively quick. 3 years was relatively fast time, but it was because I had a desire, and I think that he saw that I had this desire to really go after something I was pursuing. And I at the time, I didn't know what it was I was pursuing. I just had a desire to do more. I wanted to go out and really build. And so I had some successes in the real estate world from 2002 through about 2009. And then in 2009, another shock came my way, and I'd be glad to share that with you as well, Michael.
Well, that's just, I mean, what you're really doing though is validating the message of our entire course. Is the more that you invest in yourself, as we invest in ourselves, we become aware of opportunities we can seize. But the harder we work, other people are going to want to invest in us because they're going to see we can bring value. I heard Adam say the guy saw that I was hungry. And he's a businessman. He needs somebody who's going to be hungry and help him achieve his goals. I always like to quote, and those of you who've been watching our series know I frequently say one of the lessons I learned from Zig Ziglar, who said, if you can help other people get everything they want, you can get everything you want. And Adam seems to be a master of that and learn to really internalize that and grow. Walk us through, those next opportunities on how your business grew during that mortgage era.
So during the mortgage era, like I said, what happened is you start really being surrounded by these business people. I got a quick story to tell though, to tap into this.
Yeah.
Going back to the not having any suits. Well, my father was a blue collar worker in construction. He didn't have many suits either. He probably had a couple for funerals or maybe a Christmas dinner with the company, but generally he was a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. And so I had to thumb through his closet to figure out how was I going to show up day one of this real estate job with no suit and tie. It was a suit and tie job. And so I didn't have any money to go out and buy any. And so I remember for the first few months of my career in business, it is real estate, but in business, I was a prideful guy. I like to dress nice. I like to carry myself with pride. And I literally found myself wearing my father's shoes, dress shoes and slacks and dress shirt that obviously did not fit. You end up growing in your career. You realize I go to a tailor, they get a suit, it fits a certain way. Then you look back, anyone that saw me knew that I was not just wearing something off the shelf, off the rack, but it didn't even fit. Like it should have been on. I was stuffing my dress shoes with toilet paper just so they wouldn't fly off my foot. And it was those things that I was willing to do. To me, those were little sacrifices that I told myself, I have to sacrifice at these highest levels right now. If I want to make this work, I got to swallow my pride, walk through that front door and just do it. Because I've been given an opportunity at this point. I can't say no because I don't have the suit and tie. You just got to go out and make it happen. So that was a funny story. Some of my friends.
Before you go on from that story, I want to give the takeaway on what I just heard, because so many people in prison and jail give this excuse. Don't be an excuse maker. Some people say, well, there are no programs here. Well, I can't really do it because there's no rehabilitation. No, what we just heard from Adam is, whatever it takes, make it happen. Take advantage of what you do have and quit complaining about what you don't have, and understand that life is not perfect. There are incremental steps that we all have to take along the way. And I learned that from him from the day I was sitting in a solitary cell staring down a 45-year sentence. I looked to guys like him and I said, okay, I don't like where I am. I don't like this situation, but if I want to change it, I got to do it. So thank you very much for that story. And please keep giving us that wisdom.
Yeah, there we are. So as I mentioned, I had done fairly well. I was around a good group of people, got down to Orange County, California, out of the Inland Empire, got separated myself from my old friends, and was starting now to interact with new people, business people. Everyone was striving to do just more. And so I'm now kind of in that world. I start making pretty good money. And so it's like, all right, I'm a young man at this point. I have my own place down at the beach. I've got my own car. I'm establishing my credit. I'm working for a company. It was good times. But again, as I said, I fell on my face again because I didn't realize that it got away from me. Your mindset gets away from you. You've now been out of the jail systems for a decade. You don't feel that you're doing anything wrong. Maybe having a couple cocktails and then driving home, which we know isn't good. But other than that, you feel like you're a good person, you're doing things good, you're working your ass off. And one morning, the office was surrounded by a dozen FBI agents, and there was questions, and my name was one of the names that came up. And so, literally, my heart sank, and I said, "What is going on?" And so I had to relive the experience of dealing with our federal government at that point.
Getting some more free room and board. Let's talk about some of the other businesses that you built and the challenges that you felt in becoming an entrepreneur and overcoming it again and just going on.
Yeah. So again, dealt with federal government, overcame that, lessons to be learned, and I learned them. And so again, I was out of the real estate industry. Many of us know that around that time, the real estate market had crashed. And so I was 30 years old. I had absolutely nothing. Parents were kind of tired of opening up the door and giving me a place to stay. I had met my wife, my wife now, about a year prior to this. And we were dating, and she kept in contact with me and said, "Hey, listen, there's gentlemen working where I'm at that are doing really well. They're making really good money, and maybe you should come and see if you could get a job." I was looking for work, didn't have a car, wasn't going to have to wear my father's suits again, but was starting over at 30. And so I jumped into an industry in financial services, and literally was the bottom guy on the totem pole. But the great thing is I knew that I had work ethic, and I had no problem starting at the bottom. Within 2 years, I was managing the company. I had probably 40 employees below me. I'm back to doing 6 figures a year in income. I get married. My family is.
What year was that?
That was 2010, end of 2010.
And when you began, you said that you started entry level, but within 2 years, you had a team of 40. Could you walk us through that trajectory a little bit?
Yeah. So it was starting at the very bottom and knowing that I had experience in business once before with my real estate career, and just saying, look, I'm going to be humble in this moment. I'm going to learn the business. It's new to me, and I'm going to outwork, which has always been a big thing to me. Outwork everyone. You don't have to be the best, but if you outwork them and you're willing to take the time to invest in yourself, I think that the hardest worker, the one giving it his all, can rise above. Now, I did have a skill set. I was great in sales. I was a great communicator. So I did have that going for me. But at the end of the day, no one was giving me anything. I was going to earn it. And so I put in the sweat equity, worked my tail off for, and slowly was working my way up through the company.
Could you give us an example so that, because look, I'm a dreamer, and I would dream to be successful like you. I'm sitting in prison, I'm jailed. I want to dream, but I said, well, what does that look like? Could you walk us through a typical day where you are building your sweat equity? When you woke up, what did you do? How do I get through the day?
So typically then, again, let's go back. No car, getting dropped off, 30 years old. You're around men and women that kind of are somewhat established. And so the first thing is just being grateful that you're waking up and you have an opportunity. You're not sitting in that jail cell, right? And so the opportunity is yours. And I would go in just saying, today I'm going to give it my all, and I'm going to learn something, and I'm going to do the best that I can do today. And then tomorrow I'm going to do the same thing. And it's not being afraid to ask questions, being respectful to your peers, being willing to ask questions in a way in which people will receive you and want to help you. And so I knew I didn't know the business I was in. I knew I had to learn, and I had no problem going up to people and asking them questions. And so I did.
What is that? What, describe that industry again for our audience? The business that you're in?
The business at this time was collecting. I was a bill collector for banks, major financial institutions, Bank of America, Chase Bank, you name it. We were collecting their bad accounts. We were bill collectors.
Okay. Now, is there any reason that somebody in jail or prison with a background could not follow in your footsteps and try and achieve the same level? Say, wow, that sounds really good. If he could develop himself in that industry just through a hard work ethic, good communication skills, good salesmanship, that they couldn't follow in your footsteps? Can you see any roadblocks to them?
No roadblocks at all. And even if it's not that industry, there's other industries, there's other employers, there's other corporations, there's people out there willing to give you the chance. They just want someone that's going to wake up, that's going to put a full honest day in, and that's going to give it their all and not make excuses and not be lazy. So the jobs are out there. You got to find it. You can't make the excuses, because I know they exist. I still own one of them.
So it's not only though the jobs are out there and you've got to find it, you are also a master in creating jobs as well for a lot of people. And I know that you're going to talk with us about some of those, how many jobs you have created in building companies that generate $11 million in annual revenues. But tell us about the skill set, if it's okay, the difference between being this man with a really solid work ethic, harnessing or leveraging all of the value from his communication skills and his critical thinking skills, to saying, I'm starting from ground zero, I'm going to build. But then you didn't only have to build yourself, you had to start building your team, and you built people around you. What is the different skill set that you have to be a leader of 40 people versus just being an individual leader?
Right. I think a big thing, and I think that evolved in time as being a business owner. It started as being a manager of the company that I said I earned, I've kind of earned my position over the course of that 2-year window. I think one, being a hard worker, being the first one to show up and the last one to leave sets precedence. And so right away, you're able to look at someone that's possibly slacking and say, you're not putting in the time. And if they see you leading by example, they're willing to buy into that. And so that went a long way for me. Being sympathetic to individuals, what may not be so important to other people is very important to others. And so as you're managing human beings, you got to have a sympathetic ear to understand that not everyone is operating at the same levels, and then being able to communicate with them at their level. But in that same sentence, being able to help them understand and see your vision and the expectation that you're setting for them. It's a real expectation because you believe in them enough that they can reach hit those goals. And so in that, I think that being sympathetic to human beings and people, them seeing that you're genuine and willing to do anything you're asking of them, you start to really earn trust and respect from your peers. And I think that's when I was able to start building a team that not only supported me while I managed, but was willing to trust in me enough when I went on to open my first company in these later stages of life and follow me on that journey.
And that's a really salient point for everybody that we want to learn about leadership, is that we should never ask anybody to do anything that we're not doing ourselves. We've got to lead by example and then create these standard operating procedures, defining excellence, and then showing people, if you want to rise to a higher level, here are some benchmarks that you want to hit. And I've got to believe that you became a master of creating those types of standard operating procedures for the businesses that you built. Could you give us a little bit insight on how you train your team and how you define excellence in the companies you build?
Yeah, so training the team goes back to, again, not asking them to do something that you wouldn't do. And so when they can buy into you're going to give them proper advice and that you're going to lead by example, they're willing to take the time to sit and listen. And so in growing and scaling companies, you have to be willing to invest the time into understanding, one, what is your objective, where admitting if you're not doing things right, if you've made mistakes, and learning to be creative in investing time into understanding how could we make this process better. A lot of it comes also with being able to let go and trust that you have a team and delegate responsibility to your team and trust that they're there for a reason, and let them know that you trust that they're there for a reason. and they will work to create what it is that follows your vision. When it comes to training people, your staff, employees, upper management, a lot of it has to do with just proper communication, executing a plan, and being able to give them clear direction and letting them know it's okay if they make a mistake, and working with them through that. I'm still learning today. The great thing is you do pass on some responsibility to other people and let them figure things out and then come back to you. And it gives them a sense of accomplishment as well. So we definitely don't know it all, but we're hiring and putting people in place that help, the overall success of each venture or the company. So
the kind of jobs or the kinds of businesses that you build, tell us about how the compensation structure works, because there's a lot of people in prison that really have this vision of what they're going to earn, but they don't really understand what that concept means because they've been out of the workforce. When I went to prison, I was 23 years old, and I was incarcerated till I was 49 years old. So, I never had a job. I didn't understand it. I'd read about it. I want to learn, but I know that would be something I'd be curious about from an entrepreneur. If I want to come to you and say, I'm hungry, I've invested in myself, I've got a really strong communication background, and I think I can bring real value to your company, what could I expect? And how could I improve my lot in life? How would my compensation work?
Yeah, so I think with compensation, if you want to be a high earner, there's going to be two things. Own your own business or be a great salesman. If it's not one of those two things, then be a real hard worker, go outwork everyone in the company, and in time earn that position that's paying you that salary. That's something that is a salary that you're comfortable with, right? And so in my company, it's you're going to earn it. You come into my company and you want to make the big bucks, you're going to generally be in a commission with low salary position, but we're putting your earning potential back on you. And so what I've learned in my careers, generally the lower paying salaried or hourly positions with commission is going to give you an opportunity to make your money. And I always, over my career, wanted the higher commission positions because I wanted to be the designer of my fate when it came to my income. I didn't want someone to say that I was only valued at an X. I wanted to go out and earn it and show that my skill set or the potential earning was there based on a skill set or my willingness to work harder than others. And so generally in the workforce, sales, commission driven positions are going to be a way to higher earning. I think that if you came into a company like mine, the way it's structured today, it's your willingness to come in at a rate that is relevant to the position you're being hired for, and then earn your way and work your way up the ladder with in due time. And then you'll start to see those fruits of your labor come to fruition.
So that's incredibly valuable information. When I was in prison, and I used to dream of coming to work for a company like yours. And I used to have this visual, maybe you'd call it a fantasy, where I'd say, I just need to find an industry where somebody is earning $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, $1 million a year, whatever that number is. If there's somebody earning it, I want to compete with that guy. I want to work hard and learn from that guy. And so what does that skill set, what skill set do I need to develop so that I can go in there and match him? And it's not I'm taking from him. It's rather, if he can do it, I can do it as well. And the owner's going to be thrilled to have both of us on there. Because if he's paying me 500, well, that means the company's probably earning an extra 2 million. That's the way this whole process works. And we all should be thinking in terms of saying, how do I invest in myself? And so in your business, $11 million business, and you know, I don't know. I didn't ask you the name of your company. I'm not going to reveal that. I'm not going to ask you to reveal any human being. But what in an $11 million company, what would the highest earner besides the principal or the equity stakeholders, what could that person expect to earn? Number one guy.
Yeah, so we had upper management. Our top upper management is in the mid to high, 150 to 200,000 range, and there's probably a handful of those guys that had upper management positions that were making that wage.
And what's so important for somebody in jail and prison to understand is that that's only a handful. Everybody in prison says they're going to come out and they're going to drive a Mercedes and they're going to live, on the ocean and they're going to have all these things, but they don't realize it's a handful. It's a handful. If you want to reach your highest potential, you've got to be that person that's willing to truly invest in yourself and build. And let me point something else. In order for Adam to have built a business that can employ people and give them that opportunity, I suspect, Adam, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you had to invest a considerable amount of capital to build this machine and keep this machine going and growing. Could you elaborate a little bit on the capital investment that it takes to build a great business?
Yeah, and so, I guess dollar amounts are relevant to the different type of business. The great story was, circling back for a moment, is when I decided to leave that company after 2.5 to 3 years and build my own company. I had saved money over the course of 3 years, but I needed more capital. And we were looking at probably for this company, a small company, 200 grand to get us going. And so you're not talking giant corporations, but, a small business that was going to hire 20 to 30 people on the onset. And so I went to my father. And I went to family, and I believed that over the course of those years that I had earned the position to sit down with them again and make the ask, through my hard work, through my earnings, through where I was with my family. And my dad tapped into his 401k. And again, we're talking a blue collar guy in construction that was putting every bit he can away for retirement, tapped into his 401k, and another aunt of mine. And so they came up with 75 grand, and I came up with the rest. And so I started my first company with 200 grand. That company in itself ended up over the course of 7 years, 2 locations, about 70 employees, and we were doing several $1 million a year. My father did really well on his investment. It was probably the investment opportunity of a lifetime. But that was business one. And so it was a couple $100 grand. The thing is it was me working there 15, 16 hours a day, sleeping at the office, willing to do everything it took. That was my heart and soul. And now I knew I had my father's retirement on the line. There was no failing. There was nothing going to stop me at that time to building a successful business.
And that is just such incredibly valuable information that you've just given to us. He just told us before he could qualify to develop the courage or the backstory to say, I want you to tap into your retirement and invest in me. He had to invest in himself and build his pathway along the way, just like you do. If you're sitting in a jail or a prison, you may be coming out of jail without $1. You may be coming out of jail never having worked. I was that guy. I went to prison at 23 for bad decisions I made when I was 20. I didn't come out till I was 49. But wow. Because I listened to leaders like Adam, I owned my first piece of real estate within a week of being in the halfway house. And if you want the backstory on that, you're going to have to read the coursework in the book. But the reality is that we have to all learn from leaders. Adam inspired me. Adam is the kind of guy I wanted to learn from. And I'm just so grateful to him for coming on this show and sharing this story. I just hope you take, you show your appreciation to him, because all he's asking you to do is come back to society as a law-abiding, contributing citizen. He's invested his time, and we want you to invest your time to be the best that you can be. Adam, at one point, after you made your investors whole You created a lot of jobs. You generated millions of dollars in revenues. Those revenues generated taxes that paid for roads and bridges and probably even some jails and prisons along the way. But then you went on to build new businesses. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that pathway. What inspired you to build the next version of your success trajectory?
Yeah. So again, thank you, Michael. I think it was another milestone when you get a phone call from people in the business world now, and they're saying you have a skill set in business and a reputation that is following you, and there's an opportunity, and we think that this might be something up your alley. When you get that phone call, it's like, how can other businessmen look at me in that light, right? Like, it gives you that sense of, this is why I'm doing this. It's not about the money. I knew that I could get through those dark times and get to where I'm at today. And this is it's encouraging to hear other business leaders that don't come from the background that I have, that might not even know my real story. Now they're calling me with investment opportunities and want me to be a part of this next venture. And so in that, again, it was more of that a learning process, but I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to invest in another very niche company. I believed in its message and what the company was going to stand for. And at that time, I had the means to put together some funds and had other people in my circle. Now that I had created a new circle of people that had capital to invest, and we built another company, and I still run that company. It's been 8 years now that I've ran this company, but this time you were talking $1.6 million as an investment to get this company going. And so again, my successes were the fact that I could pick up the phone and had what we would call maybe street cred amongst people that knew me in business, to say, I'm raising capital for a new venture. Would you be interested? And you have interest from a lot of successful business people. And so there we were, 1.6 into a new venture, and that company has done well. It's been around for 8 years. It's employed hundreds of people, and it's had its hurdles, but the hurdles over a course of 8 years are they're not necessarily fun, but great learning experience for you as you become a businessman that's going to be well versed in different avenues and obstacles in business. So you have to walk through the experience. And so this company has allowed me to do just that in the business world. I've grown a lot running this company in the last 8 years.
Well, you've grown a lot personally, but you've also created opportunities for other people to grow. And that's what's so inspiring to me as an aspiring entrepreneur and somebody who's served a lot of time in prison. I always really value listening and learning. And I hope that our audience, people in jail and prison, recognize that same message. The more you invest in yourself, the more other people are going to want to invest in you. And it's just an incremental step. The things that Adam is able to do today, and we're filming this in May of 2021, he probably lacked the skill set to do that in 2015, right? Or in the year 2000. You've evolved along the way. And that, as human beings, that's what we are, is we're a product of our past experiences. But at any given day, we are choosing what we're going to look like 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And I just want to thank you so much, Adam, for being so generous with your time. I know you've got a lot of people competing for your attention, but when we reached out to you and told you that we're trying to be the change we want to see in the world, you said you wanted to be a part of it, and you have been a part of it. And so now you are a prison professor as well, and we'll be using your story to teach and inspire. And I want to thank you also for the additional time you're taking to create the lesson plan. And that lesson plan, everybody in jail and prison, you need to go through it, use it to develop your critical thinking skills, your writing skills, your oral communication skills, your work ethic, because that's what's going to make all the difference in your life, just like it made in Adam's life, just like it made in my life. I don't ever ask anybody to do anything I'm not doing. And you see, I'm doing it right now, just trying to learn from a master, somebody who knows a lot more than I know. And I recognize that and I appreciate that. And I just want to thank you very much, Adam. I want to ask you, as we come to the end of this particular lesson, do you have any final words that you'd like to leave to the men and women and even at-risk youth that are consumers of the Prison Professors programming as we distribute it across institutions across America?
I think in closing that all things are possible. I mean, we hear it and we almost think it's cliche, put your mind to it and all things are possible. You guys are opening up doors of opportunity for these young men and women or adult men and women that have a platform to speak to people that have similar life experiences of them and have been able to navigate through the complexities of what coming home looks like, if there is a home, or navigating through the complexities of incarceration. Use these tools as ways to begin to create your future and take the message as serious as possible, because we've lived that life, been incarcerated and been through those experiences and have come home and created opportunities for others and have done it with nothing, these two hands, and willing to go in and do the work. So I encourage everyone to stay fast in faith and believe in themselves. And I think that you guys are doing great work, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of it.
Well, we're fortunate to have you. As a Chinese proverb tells us that I have in the course, it says, if you want to know the road ahead, ask somebody who has walked back. And that's what we have heard from Adam today, a man who has been where you are today in the past, and he's walked through it. He's faced the challenges. He's fallen down. He's been generous enough to tell us how he got back up. And he's advising you, hey, start investing right now in the future, regardless of how many bad decisions you've made in the past. It's never too early and it's never too late to sow seeds for a better future. And I'm just going to recap real quick so that you know what these lesson plans mean to you and what I would have learned from Adam if I were still inside of one of those solitary cells. Number one, you got to define success in your life. If you don't like where you are right now, start figuring out what can you do better. I remember at the start of this interview, Adam said he didn't like being in jail. He didn't like being incarcerated. And so he wanted to start thinking about the people he would meet in the future. That influenced his critical thinking skills. So that leads to your goals. If you know what you want, set some clear goals that are going to help you along the way. Number three, you got to make that commitment. Make 100% commitment. Remember what he said. He'd sleep on the floor. He'd outwork everybody 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day, because he knew that he had to be committed. 4, you've got to see yourself as being something more than where you are right now. That's in our 4th module about aspiration. Adam saw himself growing and he never quit investing in himself. 5, you have to take action. You can't be someone who talks about it. This is a man who's built not one business, not 2 businesses, but multiple businesses. And then he has successful people investing in him because they want him to grow. That leads us to number 6. You've got to be aware. Stay aware of opportunities that you can seize. Make sure that you are making the marketplace aware of you, and you got to hold yourself accountable. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you whether you're successful. Learn these new skills along the way and define success every single day. Number 8, you got to be authentic. You got to be for real. He's not a man who talks about being successful. He's a man who does it. Number 9, you've got to celebrate the little achievements. Remember when he spoke with us about having those shoes? They didn't fit him. He didn't care. It didn't matter what he had to do. He would celebrate the fact that he had a pair of shoes. He could go to work. He could learn a new skill. And he decided to really deploy everything he's learned to become the best in the world at what he does. And then number 10, this is the section of appreciation, showing your gratitude for the blessings that have come your way. He has certainly done that for us by giving us an hour of his time to film this video, but probably another 10 hours that it took him to write the lesson plan that you're working through right now. I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors, thanking you for being a part of our community. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe. If you're inside of a jail or a prison, make sure that you follow Adam's path and you become successful yourself. Thank you.